tonight with the city council and the park board on Monday, May 19th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Roll call.
Blackwell. Campbell,
Present.
Collins,
President.
Dockery, Yossi.
Present.
All right, well, we got the park board here and half the council. So we'll go on to number 2 here, Shadow Meadows update on the pond and basin.
So not much for an update, on this. Right now we have Shive Hattery working with their team in Des Moines to put together some pond sizing options and costs that should be to us by June 13th. So if we're looking to schedule a joint meeting for that, late June or July would work well for that. It can be another full board joint meeting, or we can have some discussion on setting up a steering committee for individuals that can just focus on that project and take action on that and provide updates along the way, whatever the preference is by the board and the council. And then also with the next meeting, discussion on who we would like in attendance, if we want to invite the Army Corps of Engineer representative or the Iowa DNR representative that have been working with us on this project, we can do that. Other than that, not much for any updates on that right now. We're going to figure out what our options are, not only for the pond, but for beautification and stabilizing the banks. Thoughts on who to be in attendance for that meeting? Do we want full joint board?
Seems to me, and I'm just, if y'all have a different perspective, that maybe a steering committee might be a better option. It might be a little bit more nimble and able to move a little bit, with a little bit more.
What type of numbers are you thinking?
As far as the number of bodies?
Yeah.
No, I'm just gonna pull that out of here, maybe 2 from the park board and then whatever you think is most appropriate for the council and city staff.
I like that.
And there's also a couple city citizens that are interested too. Eric Grunhagen, who's talked to you quite a bit, maybe we get a citizen on there as well. So maybe 2 from us and 2 from you and a couple citizens, and
I think whatever makes that process simpler and easy to track through, because I think time is important here. We've been pushing that off for way too long, so.
We agree, candidly, we've had no discussion about it because it's such a big project in scope and finances that it's, maybe a couple pay grades above our level right now, but we want to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
If we can be at all. And so we're happy to participate and, work towards that solution in any way that makes most sense.
Well, I think it's important too, to have that discussion that I don't think fixing the pond issue, the detention area issue should affect the other projects for the parks. This is something that's been going on long enough that we shouldn't hurt another opportunity because we're fixing this.
I think this is a project that should be more city focused from our versus at the park board. They have enough projects on their list, but they're doing good things. And I think if there's funding that needs to be done, it needs to come from us.
We agree.
And that doesn't mean if there's part of the beautification side of it, if there's somebody that wanted to partner with some of that, that might be an opportunity. But as far as fixing that problem, I think that lies on the city.
Absolutely. I agree.
I will send out a follow-up email in the next week or 2 and start kind of rounding up who those individuals will be on that steering committee and get everybody's input on that and keep everybody up to date.
We'll put my email out there. You're thinking end of June, maybe?
Yeah, end of June or July, Zach thought would be a good time to get that. They would have those project options and costs available at that time.
Any more discussion on the Shadow Meadows pond right now?
Yep.
All right, we'll move on to number 3, new business. Discussion of park board priorities and planned CIP projects.
All right, so if I can, I'd like to take you through the process a little bit. We've even got some more projects here than are listed on the agenda. So I'd like to take you through all of our thinking. We may refer to the map that is on the screen there, just put up, and that I think Tony has given to everybody at the table so that you got a copy. We take no credit for this map. Tony has done a masterful job of putting that together. But if I can, let me talk through our funding sources, then our project priorities, where we see the differences, and then where we have some gaps, if that makes sense to you. And please feel free to jump in and ask questions at any point. So with the funding sources that we have in our in our capital improvement funds, we've got $215,246 that are in our budget. In addition to, we have an anticipated gift coming, we're expecting it to come as a bequest. That's we've been told is $100,000. And then 2 weeks ago, I think we were notified that we received a $20,000 grant for the installation of restrooms at Crandall Park from the Riverboat Development Authority in the amount of $20,000. That gives us a total of $335,246. And I can give you copies of this if you'd like to have this. That includes those designated funds. So there's some specifically designated funding there. You'll see in the agenda that was given to you that we've got a whole bunch of projects there. Our number one project that we have that we feel very strongly needs to be tackled very quickly is getting some security at the soccer fields. There's been enough issues out there. The soccer club has been religiously attending our board meetings, giving us their input. They've been great to communicate with us, sharing with us what's going on. I think they've communicated with the city and with Eldridge Police. With Tony's help in doing some research, we've determined that the best thing that we can do to start off with is to install a 4-foot black vinyl fence completely around the soccer fields with appropriate gates and ways for people to get in there to at least keep, if nothing else, keep the vehicles off the fields, because we certainly have seen enough damage. We have way too much of an investment in our sprinkler system, in the grading of the land, in the turf installation, that we really need to do something to protect that. The cost that we have is a really, I think, reasonable cost for the amount of fencing that we're talking about at $47,000 is what we're looking at. And then the second piece that we want to look at there is because not everything happens necessarily with vehicles on the field tearing up the turf, but there's some other things that go on in the parking lots and maybe on the storage units out there. And even with the goals that the soccer clubs install themselves, we'd also like to install security cameras, which come to an amount of a little over $7,100 plus $100 a month fee for the service, which comes to $8,318. So those are our two number one priorities when we look at Hickory Creek Park and what we want to try to knock out there. Now, moving down the list, and I'm looking at my list, not the list that you have in front of you. We want to install restrooms at both Crandall Park and at Elma Green Park. We think to really lift the amenities at both of those parks, we want to get away from the porta potties that get dumped on a regular basis, that aren't necessarily the most pleasant things when you walk by them after they've been sitting out there through the summer months, et cetera. We want to do something similar to what we've done at Centennial Park, we were able to do last year. And that's what that $20,000 grant from RDA is meant to go towards. Specifically, that one is at Elma Green Park. We believe that we have some designated funds that will help us with the Crandall Park restrooms, and then we'll have to make up the difference of the restroom cost at Elma Green Park as well. So we want to knock out both of those. And while we're talking about Crandall, and by the way, each one of those is $72,805. So we'd be doing that twice. We'd be looking at whatever, if you add that together, double that, we'd be looking at doing that in each of those parks. While we're also talking about Crandall Park, we've got a very nice shelter there that's in place. However, the shelter roof is in need of some serious repair, actually not repair, replacement. Tony has costed that out as well. It's a nominal cost, but nonetheless, it comes out of this fund as well at $2,825. So while we're knocking out a restroom at Crandall Park, we also want to get that shelter up to speed. And boy, I was in that park yesterday. If we can get a restroom in there and we can clean up that shelter, we will have a really dynamite park right in the middle of that end of town. So there's our restroom projects. That's our other project at Crandall Park. The other really important project that we've really got to work on, and that is the Lion Shelter project at Sheridan Meadows. The concrete and the timber beams, the timber supports rather, that hold that, shelter up have, fulfilled their lifespan. And desperately need to be replaced. There's liability issues there, especially with the concrete. The supports that are holding that shelter in place, are at the end of their life and we'll probably start to see some failure if we don't do something soon. We have a bid just to do concrete and to replace those supports of $46,000. And so we'd like to get that going without doing any other amenities to that project at all at this time. We can talk about this maybe a little bit later, but the Lions Club themselves is looking at doing something more with that, but probably more on the aesthetic side would be my guess. And we can talk a little bit more about that down the line. So that's another priority that we have. Then the other thing that we need to take a look at is, actually, we've already invested in this, is putting, fencing slats in the pickleball courts. We've already spent and allocated $4,500 for that project. That is just for the slats. That does not include the labor, and Tony's team will spend the summer, actually installing those slats so that we're not replacing those nets on a regular basis. If we take a look at just those projects, the soccer field security, Crandall and Elma Green restrooms, Crandall Park shelter roof, the Lions Club shelter stabilization, and the pickleball fencing slats, that brings us to $253,053, which is great when you take a look at the total amount that we have, or we anticipate having of $335,000. So we have a difference of $82,193 to the good. However, we don't have all of our projects covered yet. And so one of the things that, so these next projects, we don't have estimates for yet. So keep in mind, we may be 82,000 to the good with the projects that we have so far, but some of those funds are designated and we're waiting on estimates for these other projects. We'd like to see the Elma Green Park shelter be replaced. That shelter is, that gets used a lot. I don't know how often you drive by. I live on 8th Street, so I drive by it constantly. And in the summer months, I'm can't be surprised how often there seems to be picnics and family reunions and things going on down there, but that shelter is straight out of 1976. And although we've put different color lipsticks on that pig occasionally, and it's still sturdy, it nonetheless needs to be upgraded to be something that's more amenable to the community of Eldridge, and what our residents would expect. And so we want to look at replacing that. Another thing that's.
Is that a different one on the roof you talked about replacing?
Yes, so that's at Elma Green.
Okay.
So the roof replacement is at Crandall Park, which is right behind the Methodist
Okay.
Church.
I wrote that on.
Elma Green is at the corner of 8th Street and Leclerc Road.
Yep.
Right? So, which would go great with the new restroom that we want to install there, right? So both Crandall and Elma Green would have a revitalized shelter at Crandall, new restrooms at both parks, and we want to install a new shelter at Elma Green and really bring those parks would really be in great shape then without any major amenity changes that would need to happen. I think we have one playground issue that we need to deal with at Crandall, but that's down the list a bit. Another thing that we must deal with that is not accounted for yet, dollar wise, is we have to deal with resurfacing the pickleball courts. I'm sure you see how often the pickleball courts get used. There was just a big tournament over the weekend that Jill participated in. And we know that the resurfacing can be fairly expensive. Tony is looking at bids and I think also looking at maybe a different approach that the city of Bettendorf is taking with their pickleball courts, which maybe could save us some dollars, but we're waiting on the estimates for that. Another thing that we need to deal with that we just learned this year, but we've got to sandbag some money for, and that is our concession stands have to have some upgrades per the Scott County Health Department. When we were running the concession stands, we didn't know any better that we should have maybe gone through the health department. And when we contracted out with our contractor for this summer for the first time, that individual, Blessing, knew the exact right thing to do, had the health department come out. Health department told us exactly the types of things we need to do, but gave us a year, grandfathers for a year, until those things can be made. And we're talking about things like making sure we've got proper sinks specifically for hand washing, proper sinks specifically for, doing dishes and things like that and doing those all properly. So we're going to have to upgrade those concession stands prior to next year's summer baseball season. So we're sandbagging for that, or we need to at least. Then we need to take a look at, as I mentioned, the Lions Club shelter, and see how we want to cosmetically refresh that and maybe even bulk that up a little bit from the restroom perspective as well. We're gonna, wait to see what the Lions Club is willing to potentially help with. And Scott just told me tonight that he's made the motion to get that on their agenda for them to begin having those conversations to see what they'd be willing to do. So we're also looking at that. And then the final thing that's on our list to get done, and I know this is an ambitious list, but we believe it's a doable list. We're not trying to build a lake like we were the last time we met, right? We still would like to build that lake, but we understand that that is not something that's gonna be cost effective at this time. The last thing that we want to do, part of it's pretty small, part of it's gonna be a little significant, is we haven't finished off Sanctuary Gardens. We've got some signage, right now that, is being looked at that would give the history of that piece of land, the church that was there and the tornado that wiped it out and the graves, that remain on that piece of property. And at the same time, you'll notice that we put a pergola, we installed a pergola in there, I believe it went in last fall, which is beautiful. If you haven't driven by or walked through Sanctuary Gardens, it is, one of the, best places in Eldridge in my opinion. But we want to do some masonry work around the posts on the pergola to make it match the sign. Cosmetic, it's a lower priority, but it's something that we've been talking about for a while that we want to get finished off. So even though we have an $82,000 difference, we have some pretty significant things that still need to be accomplished. The pickleball court resurfacing, the concession stand upgrading, and then taking a look at a shelter at Elmer Green and so on. We know that we're not gonna be able to do all that for the $82,000 we have left, or it's very unlikely, unless Tony's able to pull a magic out of some, rabbit out of some magic hat that he has. It's not likely we're gonna be able to do that. And so I'm gonna do what, any good salesperson does, and I haven't been in sales for a while, but I'm gonna ask for some help, from the council, on the security part of Hickory Creek Park, and see if there's a little more that we could get from the council to help us with that fencing project. Specifically because that project wasn't even on our radar until 2.5, 3 months ago. And so as we were planning out our priorities, we weren't looking at spending $47,000 on installing fencing all around that park until we started to see some serious, but started to realize that the vandalism was a recurring issue and that we needed to deal with something, quicker than we had assumed that we were going to have to deal with. And so,
Could you explain to us about the vandalism? Cause I know about one where they were in the parking lot doing donuts and messed up but I didn't know about them driving on fields and stuff like that. So
yeah, and
could you let us know about how many times this happened and
I
what the
can't,
cost was?
I can't tell you how many times it's happened. The cost of it has been pretty minimal as far as the hard costs. The costs are really in labor. And Tony's team having to go out there and clean it up. I think we've had one sprinkler head popped, is that right? But we've been lucky because we've got dozens of sprinkler heads out there, that could be taken out at any time. And we spent years and tens of thousands of dollars getting that sprinkler system put in place, not to mention the seeding and the watering that has been part of that to get the fields up to play. And we still don't have them up to the level of play that we want. It's happened multiple times. I don't know how many times for sure.
I mean, is it 2 to 3? Is it 10 to 12?
I think it's probably under 10.
Okay.
I would say it's probably somewhere between 5 and 10. Does that sound right?
Yeah, the soccer club reported to us that it's more than what we know.
Okay, cause I was on it. Were you, Scott? I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know.
we've talked about it and had
Yeah.
informal conversations around
I was there at the last one, it was probably March. Yeah, and they went out, did donuts, and they, I think, nearly missed sprinkler heads, but it is an investment to protect at the end of the day. And you go anywhere around town where they have those complexes, and they're not just wide open. There's something to protect all of them. So I think we need to look at the opportunities and the ideas. Realistically, for the fencing cost, the linear feet of fence there, that's cheap.
We were surprised.
Um,
We were surprised. Tony, really did pull a magic rabbit out of a hat there. The pricing that he got is exceptional.
and I've had a conversation with several citizens about this project because I was involved when that damage happened and coming up with the different ideas. Fencing probably checks most of the boxes. I know I looked at something a little less simpler, like posts and like some cables or chains or something, but ultimately, if you look at the fencing side of it, you're also gonna be protecting the balls too, keeping the balls in play and out of the parking lots and that. So I think it's probably a smart move. The cameras, Where is that? Did you just get one bid on that?
We did, as far as I know. Is that correct?
From the same company that did the rest of the.
Okay.
So it-
Then I would want to ask some questions on that, get a little more information on how those are backed up and so, power supplied and that, but,
I would tell you that we had, Judge Henry Latham, who's a member of the soccer club, came to our park board meeting last week. And he spoke very highly from his professional perspective, at what a deterrence cameras are.
oh, I bet.
And so we had originally just decided to go with the fence. After the last month's worth of activities out there where we've had people spraying gravel, people climbing on the soccer club's storage shed, thank you. I actually, I was the one saying, nah, we don't need the cameras. I came back last month or last week and said, I think we need to revisit the camera.
Big believer in cameras.
Yeah,
So what were they looking at doing for like power supply and keeping another separate structure or doing the storage building or?
The power we get, pulled out of the irrigation cabinet.
Okay.
And that's right where the cameras would go on a pole. And then it's all tied into the city system, so all the video goes back to City Hall. Or in the cloud, whatever.
Is that gonna be, license plate reader cameras too or not?
I don't,
They have that capability, but there's a subscription service that I don't believe is included in that price.
It's just more, the cameras probably 4 times as much. But if you have the capabilities of capturing license plate numbers is huge, but then not far from there, we've got the readers too.
The other thing that they talked about too, Ryan, is that we had numerous issues with residents taking the dogs out there. And then they do their business and then the kids go out there and step in it and fall in it and that kind of thing. And that's almost as just a big of a concern for the soccer club, even though we talked about having signs out there. The fence would just be one more deterrent, and we could definitely put signs on all the gates and let them know that the cameras are there and that it's under surveillance, and that it's against the ordinance to take your dogs there. So that's another issue too.
And I'm all for the cameras, but for the amount that we're spending on fencing, I'd love to see a nice restroom put out there. Cause that's almost as much money as a restroom.
well, yeah, it is. Our long-term plan is to have a full building with restroom concessions and storage out there. Because the soccer club cannot begin to hold tournaments out there until such a facility exists. We priced something like this out, gosh, Scott, maybe you remember, it's probably been 4 years ago.
It's before COVID, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, we would need to come back to you and say, we need a lot of help. Because as I recall, we were staring down the barrel of $175,000 just to put up the type of, building that we thought was gonna be compatible. We're not just talking about putting a restroom out there at this point. So yes, we'd like to do that too, but we think we can make a huge dent in all the parks, by doing these projects now. And then we've got to do some other things at Hickory Creek as well, right? We've got to surface that parking lot, which Tony just got us a rough bid on tonight too. Plus we have some other plans for that park so that it's not just a soccer field. In fact, we just had a landscape designer, that's okay, Jill. We can share with you at another time. Landscape designer.
City Hall tomorrow.
That's,
I think we have copies of that.
Right, I was gonna bring a
Right.
big board, but I'll bring it up to City Hall.
has given us some conceptual ideas that we're not ready to really invest in, other than we want to start mowing out some walking trails, some hiking trails back in the back 40. So, I agree, but I think for us to protect the investment that we have right now, we really need to get this fence installed. I think it's a smart move for us to do. I'd rather be doing something cool, like putting in, I don't know, a spray park or a sprinkler, or whatever, those types of things, but splash pad, thank you. But we've got to protect the investment we have out there right now.
And just to circle back, you remember we talked about in the past, a lot of their efforts have been spent on the lake. That was the last several years. That has been their number one focus on saving their money to put that lake in. And as you know, we got the numbers back and it was astronomical and that's not going to happen. So they've now switched gears and they've got a great plan for the walking trail back there. And that's something that we'll see later this year, at least the beginning of that. And then that park is really going to take shape. And I really commend you guys for your ambitious plans and projects and vision, and willingness to be nimble in jumping from one project to the other. I think every project you put out here is worthy of what our residents need and expect from the park board. So I think that's a good thing.
With the numbers and stuff here, I totally understand. Protecting the city's investment, the park board's investment there, but to start with, to help spread what the city might be able to do on some of these other things that aren't included in your 250,000 that you guys can work with. Did anybody consider like cattle gates? Cause there's like a natural buffer there of that ditch. The city uses the same type of buffer where Christmas trees, extra gravel, dirt, all that goes down there on that flat area by the sewer lagoons.
We did.
But there is a gate there.
We did. We talked about that specifically. If you look up at the soccer fields, those ditches are pretty flat. You could drive almost any vehicle through there right now. It's not like when you go down towards the Davenport soccer fields where the ditches are a little bit deeper. So we talked about that. The other thing about it is if we're gonna put in walking trails back there and start to invite people to appreciate other amenities that park's gonna have, how can we lock that off to the public and get it opened and closed on a regular basis without putting further burden on the city staff? So we didn't totally shut that out, Frank, as an idea, but we really decided to focus on the fencing and getting it enclosed for two reasons. One, because of the balls, but two, to keep vehicles and try to keep animals off the soccer field.
Okay.
Is there a cost estimate yet on the upgrades for the concessions that need to be done by next year?
There's not. That's one of the areas that we don't have estimates on yet. And that's, Tony's done an amazing job. So he's had a ton of things to get estimates on, and he's got just a few things to get back to us on. And he's worked on the priorities that we asked him to work on, but we know we do have to sandbag for the concession. We'll have to clean that up before next season.
Speak a little bit too, Jeff, about the concession stand, because we're doing it new this year, or maybe Tony can speak to that. The council might be interested in how we're doing that, contracting it out.
I'll start and then maybe Tony can provide some color to it. So as we looked at the numbers late last year into early this year, we, the city, we were losing money, I think to the tune of around $5,000. And obviously us as park board members are charged with being good stewards of the city's dollar, the taxpayers' dollar. We couldn't continue to do that. And we decided we had a couple of choices: not provide concessions, try to get volunteers to provide the concessions, which has not been successful in the past, do what we continued to do, which was a no-go with a $5,000 deficit, or do what some other communities have done, and that was to try to find a contractor. So I think Tony in particular was like, we're having concessions. You can't go to a ball field in the summer without having concessions. So come hell or high water, we need to have concessions. And so we put the word out that we were looking for a contractor. We had an individual who had experience at it, who Tony and I think some others interviewed. And I'll let you take it from there to fill in whatever you like.
Yeah, so far I've heard good things. He's doing a really good job. We had 2 tournaments over the last 2 weekends, and I heard good things. I didn't hear any complaints from the staff or the quality or anything. So as far as I know, everything's going good. Very experienced family that's been doing this for 30+ years. So hopefully they can, make a profit this year and stick around for a few years.
And don't we get a percentage, correct?
Yeah, and then they'll give the city in the agreement 10% of their profits for use of the buildings and the electricity and stuff like that.
So we'll be able to apply that 10% back to those upgrades, but it's not going to be enough to cover it, I'm sure. But the other great thing about it is we're not providing any product. We're not providing any labor. We're just providing the facility. And they come in and run it. And the amenity happens. People can have their popcorn and their hot dog and their soda at the game. And somebody else who's experienced at it can make it happen. And it's a win-win for everybody. The other thing I think it's important for us to note when it comes to the summer leagues is that we also invested in a scheduling platform. Previously, in previous seasons, Ashley Lacey, along with Trish's help, for the last however many seasons, were the schedulers, and their lives became nightmares with coaches texting at all hours, being upset about things. Ashley being diverted from what she was supposed to be doing at work to deal with whatever was going on in the field. blah, blah, blah. We decided to take a look at some sort of platform. Ashley, Tony in Nevada did some research on the platform, and we came to an agreement we invested in February, or we installed in January, something like that, and it went live late February, early March, something like that. It's not a perfect platform yet. Ashley says she's still got some things to learn about it, that she can probably make it run a little bit smoother. But I think by and large, it's worked okay, from what I understand.
And wasn't that like $5, $6, $7,000?
I don't remember right off the top of my head. Five sounds
Around
right.
fine.
But we hope to use that in the future, maybe for pickleball courts, maybe for the soccer fields, once we get that, get those in a more complete fashion, so that it's a long-term investment. And maybe even use it for scheduling the shelters at the parks.
Where,
You're already doing that, see.
and you're also doing it for the summer camps,
And the summer camps, that's right.
which is another big thing off of Ashley's plate.
Yes.
So it was another visionary thing you guys did.
Yes.
I'm not talking anymore about the walking paths a little bit, since we have copies of it, or you have a copy of it.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of what you have.
Or maybe you and Jill can talk
Somebody had
about
it
it.
up on the screen.
Put it on the screen again.
Thank you.
So, this is not a granite, right? We were trying to get a rough idea of where we could put walking paths. And so, in doing so, meeting with this, landscape designer, and Jill really did the meeting with her, came up with some other ideas as well. We want to get these walking paths in place just to get something started. And if you look at what you have on your sheet, walking paths are everything that you see in yellow. Those are the trails. And so we're not looking at, putting up shelters or putting up signage or native prairie grass or anything yet. Those are concepts for the future. What we want to do is get these walking trails in and mowed in just to get us a start where people can go out there and enjoy the peace and quiet on that back 40, and then start building towards having shelters back there and having wildflowers back there. But we also want to, before we finalize what we do there, is we want to get public input and make sure that we're addressing the needs of what the people who might use that park would find to be acceptable, and that we're putting in the right amenities. So this is a starting point. We were really excited. We think this is a really good starting point. And I think if we had our druthers and we had the money, we'd start putting this in right now. But the first step is to get these paths in just to get us going. We've been talking about this part of Hickory Creek Park for years. And the easiest thing for us to do, and thank God Tony and his crew are capable of doing it, is taking the mowers out there and let's just start mowing the paths so we can at least get step one done. Then we can go out and finalize our plans after some conversation with you all, some conversation with the public, get some final things in place, and start phasing in additional pieces of this in the future. Either we do it through our capital improvement funds, or we look at doing grants, et cetera. Maybe even soliciting donations for people who might want to invest in, whatever they might be excited about, from a shelter to a prairie area. So that gives you an idea of what we're thinking now for that back 40 there of Hickory Creek Park. Any questions on that?
How do they get across the creek?
There's one crossing that shows up on there. There.
Yes.
It's just
Right there.
basically a culvert you're crossing.
The current one that's there now.
Right,
Yes, the current
correct.
one's there. So that might be something we definitely have to address, is maybe another crossing.
Remember in the past, Dan, we were gonna put the dam, that was gonna be our access back there, and since we can't afford to do that, this is the next best step.
And I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I really do. I was just wondering what we had to do for a bridge to get across the creek.
Does it need to be reinforced anyway, Tony? I think it's good enough.
It's a culvert that we drive our vehicles across it now.
Okay.
It was like a 6 or 8 foot, isn't it? Pretty large one.
It's more 8 feet,
No.
isn't it?
No, it's pretty small.
Uh,
Yeah, we drive our vehicles across it, so.
How often do you guys currently mow that area now?
Right now, somebody, cuts it for grass hay. Just so we don't have to mow it. It's an agreement. So, cause it's kind of a win-win.
Mhm.
We just have to let that person know whenever we want them to stop, and they know that. It's in a written agreement that whenever the city wants to start making paths, that we'll let them know and they'll stop cutting it. we'll take it from there.
I mean, it's a great idea. I've gone back there with my dogs and run with them and stuff and
Have you been in the soccer field, Dan, where Ryan with your dog?
I do not. But I do go back and cross into the long grass. And I think having Trail Scout would be absolutely incredible idea. I think it's gonna draw more people there. I mean, we go right now out to Lost Groves Dog Park.
Right.
And it's pretty much similar to what you're talking about doing. They just mow trails. It's nothing fancy about it, but that's their start until they can afford to do something different with it. So.
And I've seen people walk in, you know, across this, where the sewer lagoons are, walk down your path and go down through there and walk around the whole thing. I think it's a,
Well, what a great amenity for the city of Eldridge. I mean, a pretty amazing thing. And if we can, phase some of these other features in over the course of the coming years, this could be a real jewel, for the city to have. Something that's very unexpected. Again, though, I want to keep in mind, we want to make sure that we have public input here too, before we finalize anything.
Well, and I think it's important too, because we've had this conversation in the past about disc golf out there. And
It's on our list.
you're looking at, I mean, there's places near Des Moines that bring professional tournaments in.
Right.
And they bring a lot of business into those. It's not the city of Des Moines, it's the smaller cities around it, but they bring a lot of revenue in. Bringing those. And we were actually talking to a pro, and he said this side of the state would be a perfect location for it. There's
Right.
nothing close.
A friend of mine I've known for over the years, he designs.
Yeah, we talked about
Yeah,
that.
we talked about this. Yeah, he says, this is a beautiful slate of property to do a lot of things. I'm sure he said that he told me that this part of Iowa, Illinois has nothing.
Right.
So it'd be a great opportunity whether you do a 9 or 18. He says you could go up to a tournament grade jury easily and draw in a lot of people. Cause they're looking for they're looking for people for places to go in this place.
And it's not a terribly expensive sport to get into or to set up. So
And he said that this property is just perfect. Has so many, the creek, he says, he was really thrilled that Little Creek is a lot of opportunity there.
and that just ties in with the park board's vision, you know, of making that a revenue stream too. If you get a concession stand out there and they're permanent bathrooms and the soccer club can hold tournaments, and that's gonna bring all kinds of people into town. You see what it's like in Bettendorf or on by John Deere, they're on Saturdays and the weekends. I mean, it's just packed with people and that's gonna bring people in. The same would be true out here, I would think.
But the disc golf will be a bigger price down the road. I mean, it's kind of pricey to put it together at first.
right.
To give you a sense, while we get this up, if you look at the right-hand side, you can see, Letty's doing it right now. The white line or the gray line, that is all the fencing that would go around the soccer. That's how that would be laid out. Roughly, very roughly.
So the front and the back.
Correct.
Totally around the whole.
Yep. Completely enclose it. We talked about just doing, like the east side and the south side, or the east side and the north side. Ultimately, I think, we agreed and the soccer club agreed that it makes the most sense for us to enclose the whole thing, because you know as well as I do, if somebody wants to get in there with a vehicle, they can get in there with a vehicle if it's not closed off.
Sure. Has the soccer club discussed any sort of donation on their behalf?
They have, we asked them to, I think they will, go back and revisit that. I don't think they've got huge funds, and they made a fairly significant investment when we opened it. All the goals, all the nets, they do all the lining and striping on the fields, and they virtually take care of everything else. So if they do come back with anything, I don't suspect it's going to be a big amount.
I think they
Well,
gave
just guess.
10,000 to begin with. When we-
How much was?
I think it was 10,000.
10,000,
In the
correct.
very first time when we went to them.
Yes.
And they contribute annually now, correct? Is it 5,000 a year?
I don't
3 or
remember.
5.
3 or 5, yeah.
To remember
To
that
help
contract, yeah.
keep things up. They put a lot into it.
So I assume the city covers all the expenses of mowing, fertilizer, maintaining the sprinkler system, whatnot.
Yes. Yeah, I will tell you, the soccer club is a very active and supportive group of people. They don't come and, gripe. They come and they listen and they want to offer solutions and they want to have a dialogue and they want to be part of those solutions. It's really a nice partnership. And speaking for myself, I mean, I appreciate them and they contact us when something's going on, but they're not upset with us. They're letting us know so that we can reach out to Nevada or Tony to see what needs to be done. They're a great partnership and they're a great amenity for the city.
And what they tell us, they have 300 and some kids involved in their.
Yeah,
program,
over
something like
300
that.
kids, yeah.
You know, and that's from basically March or April through October. And just as a point of information, Jeff, you mentioned too about the pickleball courts resurfacing that Tony's looking into. They recommend that pickleball courts should be done every 6 to 7 years. And if you go out to the courts now, you'll see cracks that are like this. I was talking to Tony and I played in Bettendorf weeks ago and their cracks are like this and their courts are 1 year older than us. And their courts are almost unplayable now because of liability and because the cracks are so
When
bad.
you say redone, are you talking, because I know we just had them resurfaced or repainted.
We had them repainted. We're looking at now, Bettendorf is doing something different, where originally Bettendorf thought they were gonna have to go in and resurface the whole thing. But now it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're gonna go in and fill the cracks in better and then repaint. Is that correct, Tony? You know?
Yeah, I went there today. They basically caulk, the flexible caulk down in the cracks. And then they put like a grout on top that matches the surface of the asphalt pickleball courts. And then they'll come through and paint the whole thing.
So I don't think it's gonna be as expensive as originally thought. They have to have the whole thing resurfaced, but it's gonna be an expense that, for liability reasons too, it's rough, those courts used and a lot of old people play out there, you know, the trip over one of those cracks, that would be a liability for the city. So that's something that will need to be addressed, you know, within a year, I would think maybe, and
Yeah, their courts are very similar to ours in size. So
What did we do last year to fix those cracks? You put like a cement caulk in it, self-leveling caulk?
Yep.
So they're
And it
doing the
helps.
same, but they're taking the top and putting a harder surface that
Yep.
doesn't have flexibility as much. They got the bottom flexibility, but then a hard surface on top.
Yep.
And then, but at what point then does it crack enough to where it starts to heave the concrete?
their cracks are big. We have an email into Bettendorf to see if they'll share the company and the specs and all that kind of stuff that they're gonna, like I said, just went today and looked at it. So we'll get some more information soon. Who's
Yeah.
doing it and how that
Was
works.
that, those cracks last year just popped up overnight almost.
it was
And
exactly.
it was huge.
And they haven't gotten worse over winter, but some of them have gotten wider over the winter.
That's why that's towards the top of our list of unfunded projects right now, because we know that project needs to be done. Because the use of the pickleball courts is just incredible. Along with the Elmer Green Shelter is at the top of the list of our unfunded projects, because we believe we've got some designated funds that will be required to go for a shelter at Elmer Green. So those two are probably our highest priority ones right now, along with the concession stand upgrades, and then eventually looking at the Lions Club and so on. So
Nevada, with the dollar amount that they've got for those shelters, would you need to have a certain number of bids or put that out as an RFP
For the shelters,
for the
for the restrooms,
restrooms?
for the restrooms, we would, unless, I mean, the donation that's coming in, if you're using that for the restrooms, then we would need a bid because that donation was specified on what it could be used for.
so the donation is for one park and then the grant is for the other park. And Tony has two bids that we have in hand. The 72.8 was the lower of the two bids. So whether you actually have to do a formal RFP or not, I don't know, but
I just know that at some point you have to get a minimum of 3 bids.
Yes, for vertical, I think it's like 62,000. I'll have to confirm on that for
Yeah,
sure. That's what my,
I'll have to look and see what
And
the
then
changes each year.
Yeah.
what type of structure are you looking at? Wood frame or
Yeah.
stone?
Wood frame, it'd match Centennial
what
Park.
we did last year, yeah.
Wood frame with a fiberboard exterior. And waterproof interior, that the whole thing can be hosed down type of thing. Commercial plumbing, that's all the plumbing's hit, so it can't be tampered with.
And for some of these unfunded projects, we could go look at, the riverboats again. However, the competition for those are high, extremely high. I sit on one of those boards, so I see very intimately what those are like. And they're not guaranteed, and some of the revenue for those facilities is not as strong as they used to be as well. And it is could potentially be less if this new casino is actually opened up in Cedar Rapids in the future as well. So, it might be more and more of a challenge to access some of those funds in the future.
Sounds like we need to find a local builder that wants to donate the labor and we just buy the materials.
It's like music to our ears.
There are other ways to be creative too. I know when we did the one in Parkview, and we went a different route, we did the block walls.
Mhm.
So it was there forever, but, we actually had a lot of, different volunteers of building trades that came in and donated all, the
Sure.
electricians came in and donated all the electrical. Masons came in and donated some of the block work. The carpenters came in. I mean, it really came together good and they were proud to do that in their community. You know, so there are other options, not saying that, you know, that was 15 years ago, times change. People don't volunteer like they used to, but, there are other opportunities to be creative.
I like that thinking. Maybe we save that thinking for the structure that we need to build at Hickory Creek Park then.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna be a bigger, more significant structure. Or maybe that's what we do to help refinish the Lions shelter and make those restrooms ADA compliant.
Right.
I think with what we have now, from my perspective, unless we know somebody who would jump in right now, I'd love to get these two restrooms knocked out and done, and then maybe consider the more creative options for one of those two projects in the future.
I think.
I know the Rotary Club is planning to doing exactly what you said for the band shell. They're
Okay.
planning to go after as many in-kind in labor and materials as they can.
I think the big thing for us is to kind of get an idea what we want to do with that fence. Yeah, to me, it's important. It's important that we protect our investments.
The vandalism at all the parks is increasing
And
in every community, not just here.
I'm personally, with what we know about the cameras, I'd like to see cameras out there too. Another reason to protect our stuff. I mean, we had our doorbell camera smashed Saturday night from kids after prom. So good thing I got other cameras in the house. We'll find them.
I was just gonna ask if you found them.
Not yet. But they do serve a purpose and it is a deterrent, you know, so.
But I think there's a reason that Bettendorf has nice fencing around their facilities down in Bettendorf, Montjoy too. You know, I think that's the way to go.
I think it's necessary. I think what are your thoughts, Dan?
I'm all for the cameras, the fencing, I'm kind of on the fence. No pun intended, but,
Yeah.
cause I think the cameras really deter a ton.
Sure.
And then I would start with the cameras just because I'd like to see a really nice bathroom and concession stand up there. And that's almost half of it right there. But I
I
get,
appreciate that. Our concern though is just the ongoing opportunity for cars to get out there and tear it up. And if we don't have a real deterrent to stop it, which cameras are gonna be a piece of that, our concern is what's gonna happen to either the goals or the irrigation system if we don't do something. And maybe there's a better option, and we're open to that if there is, but this was the best option that we could come up with after kicking around for several meetings.
right, and I'm not trying to down, cause I
No, I get,
I love what you guys have done here. It looks really good. I'm just a realist and I'm trying to look at the budget and what we have to give you and what we have coming up. And there's a lot coming in, but
Do you have any pictures of the fence design that you're talking about?
it's.
Is it a solid tight or is it got,
It's black vinyl,
but does it have gaps in it?
it's black vinyl chain link fence.
Chain link, okay.
Chain link fence with, 3-foot openings every 100 foot for the people to walk in and out.
Okay.
And then there's 3 16-foot swinging gates to get equipment in and out.
So we didn't go with anything extravagant on purpose. We did want to go with the black vinyl because we think it's aesthetically more pleasing in that park. But we think this will do what we need it to do. Now, I'm not saying that, some yahoo with a pickup truck and, too much testosterone couldn't tear through a fence and
Sure.
do a heck of a lot of damage, but we think this is the best deterrent that we can come up with at this time.
well, it's not only for security, it's for safety for the kids too. Because, I've been out there a few times just watching some of the practices and those balls go flying in that parking lot all the time.
Good point.
So I mean, true, I'm just looking at the whole picture, trying to see if I can get you more, not for right now, but later on. And I mean, there's
But the other thing,
it's just kind of a
the
catch
other,
22.
reverse that too. You have a fence now, you have families there watching games. And they've got young kids running around. They don't have to worry about them running out the parking lot. So there's another liability we're reducing.
We do want your help, but unless you tell us no, we're gonna proceed with the fence. Because we think it's the right thing to do, and we'll reallocate funds elsewhere if we have to. We'll hold off on something else, if that's what we need to do. Unless you tell us no. And that's, that's your prerogative, and if that's the case, then we'll work together to come up with the right solution.
I think it's your call. I mean.
We believe this is the right solution.
You have the funds. I mean, it's your money to spend. And so if you think that that's the way to go, then you guys can go ahead and do that. Back to the camera thing, I agree, Dan, that it's expensive and the camera is a possibility. So you have a camera and somebody goes out there and tears up all the fields. Well, yeah, you got them on camera, but they just still have all this damage you're gonna deal with, and you might catch them, you might not. You might get restitution, you might not, I think they've done a great job of thinking this through, and they've done a great job of fast tracking that particular project in a short amount of time when they saw that they had a need. And I think that the need warrants the fencing. And I think if we can find a way to help them if they need it, again, like I said earlier, you have a very ambitious list, and I think it's a great list. And I'm biased because I've been in the park board for 17 years. But what you guys have accomplished since COVID, because you kind of got stuck in the mud for a while there, you guys got a lot going on, a lot of good things for a lot of people.
We're excited. We think what we're presenting to you tonight can really improve the parks, really enhance the lives of the citizens of Eldridge, and it's good investment. And good, as I mentioned earlier, we want to be good stewards of our dollar. We think this is being good stewards of our dollar, taking care of what we have and then adding on to what we can.
Separating the two, fencing and cameras. We just got done upgrading the city's security system all around. It would make sense for us to upgrade and do cameras here to increase that security. And I guess my opinion is we separate that from the fence project. I would be in favor of, if you had funds available somewhere, that we would cover the cost of the cameras at a minimum right out of the gate. And then I think have more discussion on the fence. I'm in favor of helping get some of the stuff done that you need. And if there wasn't a decision fast enough and you moved forward with the fence anyway, we've got other opportunities to help out. There's a lot of great ideas here. I wish we could do all of them. I mean, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that splash pad. I'd love to see the walking paths. I mean, there's so much stuff here that I wish we could do it all. Unfortunately, we can't, but we can set goals and set timelines so that we can make all the stuff come to fruition down the road.
And Ryan, that's what we'll do. When we knock this list out, we'll rebuild the list and go to the next phase. We've got the splash pad on here. We've got disc golf on here. We've got, the things that you see for Hickory Creek Park. We've got those in our plan. We've got to knock out what we have first and then go to phase 2, phase 3 and so on. We're excited and we're motivated.
And right or wrong, it's park improvements that the public can really see. They can wrap around their arms around bathrooms, not so much paving on 7th Street or 8th Street or whatever the case may be, or a new sewer. They would much rather see money spent towards these kind of things as for their kids, and for everybody. And so just I think public opinion would be in our favor in that one.
I'll pass my little cheat sheet around so that you've got copies of it. I intentionally didn't give it out in advance because I didn't want you looking at it while I was trying to explain it to you. So
After such copious notes, Jeff, thanks a lot.
anything else, Scott? I will say this before, just so I get a chance to say it. Our support from Tony, in particular, Nevada and the rest of the team is just outstanding. If there's an issue, I don't have any hesitation of reaching out to either one of them and they respond quickly. I wish I had people in my office who responded as quickly as Tony and Nevada do. And they don't just respond, they follow up. It's great and we really appreciate that. And I will say the same thing about Scott. It not only makes a difference having Scott, who spent 17 years on the park board, but having him be our liaison and bringing all the historical knowledge And then being able to be that conduit between us and you all, is invaluable because he doesn't just have that knowledge, but he comes and he participates and we appreciate him. Maybe more so than when he was on the park board because he's bringing different perspectives now. So, it's a really good team in place and I don't know that that's always been the case, but we truly appreciate it. We've got a good group right now, so all the way around.
And thank you guys for what you do. We do appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Dale, weren't you looking at setting aside some park space over on the east side of First Street, north of Lincoln? Do you know roughly how many acres you're talking about?
32 apartments.
What's next step for us?
If there's an action item that you guys want to consider tonight, no, whether you guys want to do a motion and a vote on the cameras, what your follow-up plan is for getting back on the fence.
I think we need to put the fence on the next meeting's agenda. Hopefully have a full council here. I would be in favor of acting on the cameras. I think that's something important enough that gets started, sooner than later.
And I think we need to do it to protect our investment. I mean, it's a ton of money out there.
Yep.
And I'm so sorry, I was unaware. I heard about 2 or 3 items where they were spent around. I didn't know about the other ones, so I don't know how I missed it. But thank you for clarifying that.
For the camera expense.
Do I hear a motion for the
Can
camera?
we do that tonight, even though it's on the agenda? Can we go ahead and do that?
Do it right now.
I'd make that motion now that we go ahead and expend the funds to put security cameras at Creek Park.
Second,
7118.
plus the $100 a month.
Another 83.
So it'd be 83.18 total for the first annual expense. $100 a month. To receive afterwards.
Motion by Campbell, second by Yossi. Roll call.
Is it a roll call or is it,
Either of us.
yeah, we can just do a voice vote.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Getting some cameras.
Well, thank you very much.
Let's start.
Yeah, so, we're thrilled.
Plan to put the
Thanks for
fence
bringing all this forward. This is
I'd say really on the
great.
next
Thanks,
agenda
Tony.
because
For your hard work and
Did
Scott.
did you guys get any idea when they thought they could install?
The fencing,
Yeah,
you have any idea?
They didn't, say.
was it Lovewell?
Love Wall is the low bid on the 4, no, yes. Love Wall was the low bid, I believe, on the 4-foot line.
I would imagine they'd work with us pretty close to get it done
I would think
sooner than later.
3 weeks, 2-3 weeks probably. It's all
Yeah.
stuff they have in stock, so.
They'd probably do it in a couple days.
Anything else you want to bring in front of the council? Before we adjourn?
Oh, I think you probably heard enough from us for one day. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank
Thank you very much. And please know that you're all welcome at, park board meetings. If you ever want to attend, just to attend, or you've got something you want to bring to us, don't ever hesitate.
Well, and I think it'd be important for some of you guys to show up at the next council meeting so you could speak on behalf of that fence too.
Which is when?
June 2nd.
June 2nd.
Oh. You guys, fundraiser work doing it that night. What time will it be?
7.
Oh, I might be able to make it. I can get a Denver Country Club time. I don't golf, so I will get here as quick as I can.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, that-
Your Honor, make a motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
By Don, second by Yossi. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? We are adjourned. 6:59. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
That's perfect.